All right, listen up. Because if you've ever felt like you're chasing someone who keeps pulling away, but at the same time you're picking up mixed signals like I miss you and then a need space, this is not in your head, you're not imagining it. You're probably dealing with an avoidantly attached person who's catching feelings and has no idea what to do with them. Now, here's the deal. Avoidants don't fall in love the way most people do. When things get real, when the connection deepens, they don't lean in, they retreat, not because they don't care, but because caring feels dangerous. And when an avoidant starts falling for you, oh, they absolutely play games, but not the kind you think. This isn't about manipulation, it's about protection. So today, we're going to pull back the curtain and walk through 5 subtle, confusing, and totally real games every avoidant plays when their heart's on the line, and they're terrified of what that means. When an avoidant person starts developing real feelings, they often respond not with warmth and closeness, but with a confusing mix of pursuit and withdrawal. This is what's known as the push-pull pattern, and it's one of the most classic behaviors you'll see when an avoidant is secretly falling for someone. At first glance, it feels like emotional whiplash. One minute they're affectionate, attentive, even vulnerable, texting you good morning, initiating plans, showing real interest. And just when you start to relax and believe the connection is solid, they suddenly become cold, distant, or unresponsive. You're left wondering what changed. The truth? Nothing bad happened. In fact, something good did. They started to feel close to you. For someone with avoidant attachment, closeness is both desirable and dangerous. On one hand, they want connection just like everyone else, but on the other, emotional intimacy threatens the sense of safety they've built through self-reliance and emotional distance. Falling for someone stirs up deep fears of losing control, of being vulnerable, of getting hurt, or even of being engulfed in the relationship. So what do? They pull away. But once they create distance and start to feel safer again, they miss the connection and come back in, initiating warmth or contact. That's the cycle. Push, then pull, over and over again. To the person on the receiving end, this can feel incredibly confusing and even hurtful. You might start to internalize the inconsistency, wondering if you're doing something wrong or if you're not enough. But it's not about you. It's about their internal conflict, wanting intimacy but fearing it at the same time. The push-pull isn't malicious or manipulative. It's protective. It's their nervous system trying to regulate closeness like a thermostat. Too hot, they back off. Too cold, they reach out. It's a pattern rooted in survival, not logic. What's even more challenging is that during the button pull phase, they often won't explain what's happening. Avoidants tend to struggle with emotional language and vulnerability. They might not say, "Hey, I'm feeling overwhelmed by how much I care about you," or "I'm scared of getting too close." Instead, they go silent. They get busy. They cancel plans. They might even pick a fight over something trivial as a way to create emotional distance. And it can feel like rejection, but it's often fear in disguise. When they return, the dynamic resets for a while. They'll likely be sweet, engaged, and even romantic again. This gives the illusion of progress and keeps you hopeful. But unless the underlying attachment pattern is addressed, the cycle will continue. And that's why understanding this push-pull pattern is so important. It allows you to depersonalize their behavior. It helps you stop making their inconsistency mean something about your worth or your value. It creates space for you to ask better questions like, what do I need to feel secure in a relationship? And is this dynamic actually healthy for me? The push-pull game is a clear sign that the avoidant is catching feelings, but it's also a sign that they don't yet feel safe navigating emotional closeness. The good news? People can work through avoidant patterns with awareness, therapy, and a partner who knows how to hold space without self-abandoning. But you can't do that work for them. All you can do is recognize the signs, protect your own peace, and decide whether their push-pull is something you're willing and emotionally equipped to handle. The disappearing act is one of the most frustrating and emotionally jarring behaviors an avoidant person will engage in when they're secretly falling for you. It's the moment when someone who seemed genuinely interested, connected, even emotionally available just vanishes. Maybe not completely, but enough to make you question the entire relationship. The text messages slow down, plans get postponed, communication becomes surface level or stops altogether. And you're left wondering what went wrong, often blaming yourself for something you didn't do. But here's what's actually happening. They're overwhelmed by the intensity of their own feelings. For someone with an avoidant attachment style, falling in love can feel like losing control. It's destabilizing. The closer they feel to you, the more exposed they feel, like you can see behind the emotional walls they've spent years constructing. That closeness, rather than being comforting, triggers internal alarm bells. Instead of leaning in, they instinctively pull away, not because you did something wrong, but because proximity to intimacy feels like danger to their nervous system. So they disappear. It might be for a few days, a week, or even longer. They'll often retreat into their routines, hobbies, or work, anything that helps them regain their sense of emotional independence. This kind of withdrawal is often not discussed or acknowledged. They won't usually offer a clear reason for backing off. They might give vague excuses like, and I've been busy, and I've had a lot on my mind, or worse, they might just ghost altogether and reappear as if nothing happened. To you, it feels like abandonment. But to them, it feels like survival. Emotional closeness threatens their autonomy, and disappearing gives them the space to recalibrate and return to what feels like emotional safety. It's important to understand that their disappearance isn't always a sign that they've lost interest. Paradoxically, it can be a sign that they're beginning to care too much, and that terrifies them. Intimacy requires vulnerability, and vulnerability to an avoidant can feel like a loss of control or even weakness. So rather than facing those uncomfortable feelings, they shut down. Emotionally, they freeze. They disconnect to protect themselves from the perceived threat of intimacy. When they finally come back, they may act like everything is normal. They might want to pick up where things left off, hoping you'll just go along with it. They often avoid acknowledging the distance they created or the pain it may have caused, not out of malice, but because it's hard for them to admit they were overwhelmed. Confronting emotions is not their strong suit. They might not even fully understand their own behavior. They just know they needed to retreat, and now that they feel safer, they're back. For the person on the receiving end, this push into emotional silence can be deeply confusing. One moment you feel a deep connection, the next you're met with absence. It makes you question everything, even your intuition. But the key is to not internalize their disappearance as a reflection of your worth. It's not about being a too much or doing a too little. It's about their fear of closeness clashing with their growing feelings. Recognizing the disappearing act for what it is can help you navigate it with more clarity and less self-doubt. It's a defense mechanism, not a rejection. However, that doesn't mean you should tolerate it indefinitely. Your needs matter too. Being in a relationship or even a growing connection requires mutual emotional responsibility. If someone continues to disappear whenever feelings intensify, that pattern can become a source of emotional instability for you. You deserve consistency, communication, and connection, not someone who vanishes when love shows up. Avoidance can unlearn these patterns, but it takes conscious effort and often professional help. If they're willing to face their fears and work through their discomfort, they can move toward healthier ways of relating. But until then, the disappearing act will likely remain part of their emotional playbook, a way of saying I care more than I can handle right now, without having the words to say it. The "when I'm not ready" disclaimer is one of the most subtly disarming moves an avoidant makes when they starting to fall for you, but don't know how to handle the emotional intensity that comes with it. It might come early in the connection or surface just as things are getting more serious. On the surface, it sounds honest and self-aware. I'm not ready for a relationship, and I've got too much going on right now, or I don't want to hurt you. But underneath those words is a much more complex emotional struggle, one rooted in fear, internal conflict, and the avoidance deep discomfort with vulnerability. What makes this disclaimer so tricky is that it often appears during a time when the connection feels genuine. You've been talking consistently. They've opened up in small but meaningful ways. You've shared moments that feel real. There's chemistry, laughter, even intimacy. Everything seems to be moving forward until they suddenly pump the brakes with that one sentence, "I'm not ready." It feels like it comes out of nowhere, but from their perspective, it's a safety mechanism. It's how they try to gain control over a situation that's making them feel emotionally out of control. The closer they feel to you, the more they panic about the vulnerability that closeness requires. Saying they're not ready gives them an out. It's a preemptive strike. They sense that their feelings are growing, and instead of allowing themselves to lean into that, they start to fear what happens if it continues. What if they lose themselves in the relationship? What if you end up seeing parts of them they've worked hard to hide? What if you get too close and they end up hurting you, or worse, getting hurt themselves? These aren't just idle thoughts for avoidantly attached people. These are core fears that shape how they interact in romantic dynamics. So rather than confronting those fears head on, they put up a boundary cloaked in honesty. I'm not ready. But here's where things get even more complicated. Just because they say they're not ready doesn't mean they leave. In fact, they often don't. They might keep texting, calling, or spending time with you. They might still act like they're in a relationship, just without calling it that. This creates a gray area that can be deeply confusing for you. You're left trying to interpret their mixed signals. If they're not ready, why do they still want to see you? If they don't want a relationship, why do they act jealous, protective, or emotionally connected? The answer is that they do feel something real, but they're terrified of what those feelings mean, and so they try to keep one foot in and one foot out. The "when I'm not ready" line is a way for them to manage their fear without walking away entirely. It allows them to stay connected on their terms, terms that feel safer and more controlled. But the problem is, those terms often leave the other person emotionally starved. You might start walking on eggshells, trying not to push too hard or ask for too much, afraid that expressing your needs will drive them away. And that's how the dynamic becomes unbalanced. You're emotionally invested, while they stay emotionally guarded. What's most important to understand is that their emotional unavailability isn't always deliberate. It's protective. Somewhere along the way, through early experiences or past relationships, they learned that closeness leads to pain, rejection, or loss of autonomy. So now, when they actually do start to feel close to someone, they preemptively create space. Well, not ready isn't always a lie. It's a self-protective truth. But that doesn't mean it's fair to you or sustainable long term. If you hear these words from someone you're getting close to, take them seriously, but not just at face value. Look at the behavior that follows. Are they using this disclaimer to keep you emotionally in limbo while still enjoying the benefits of a relationship? Or are they actively working on whatever's holding them back? There's a difference between someone who's emotionally cautious and someone who's emotionally unavailable. The first can grow. The second often stays stuck. Ultimately, "I'm not ready" isn't a reflection of your worth or the strength of the connection. It's a reflection of their internal struggle. They're feeling something real, and that realness scares them. That's the hidden truth behind the disclaimer. It's not that they don't feel, it's that they feel more than they're ready to admit. The jealousy trigger is one of the more revealing behaviors an avoidant will display when they're secretly falling for you. And it often shows up in ways that are subtle, passive-aggressive, or confusing. Avoidantly attached individuals aren't usually the type to express their emotions directly, especially when it comes to vulnerability or romantic longing. But jealousy, that slips through the cracks. Even though they work hard to maintain emotional distance and act unbothered, jealousy tends to activate their attachment system in a way few other things can, especially when they realize they might not have full control over the situation or over your attention. You might notice this when you start talking to other people, even casually. Maybe you post a photo with someone else, mention spending time with a new friend, or simply become a little less available. Suddenly, their demeanor shifts. They might not say they're jealous outright, because avoidants often struggle to identify or admit their own feelings. Instead, it might come out as sarcasm, coldness, or sudden interest after a period of pulling away. You'll feel the energy change. It's almost like they realize they're not the only person in your world, and that possibility of losing your attention or affection rattles them more than they expect. This is a crucial turning point in their emotional process. Up until this moment, they've been trying to keep their feelings under wraps. They've probably been telling themselves, and maybe you, that it's casual, that they're not looking for anything serious, that they're fine on their own. But seeing you with someone else, or even just seeing you as a person who could be wanted by others, forces them to confront something they've been avoiding. They actually care. And that care comes with risk. When they feel like someone else could have access to your attention or heart, their illusion of control breaks down. The irony is that jealousy doesn't feel good to them, In fact, it triggers the very and emotional discomfort they've been trying to avoid by keeping things alight or undefined. Suddenly, the person they've been trying not to fall for is making them feel uncertain, insecure, and reactive. This can cause them to behave in contradictory ways. One moment, they might be distant, trying to play it cool. The next, they might reappear with more interest, more intensity, maybe even more affection than you've seen before. This isn't a coincidence. It's a reaction to jealousy. It's their way of trying to reassert emotional proximity without openly admitting they're affected. What makes this so confusing for you is that they often won't communicate what's really going on. You might be left wondering why they're acting strangely, being passive-aggressive, or suddenly showing more attention after weeks of ambivalence. They won't say got jealous when I saw you with someone else, because that would require a level of emotional exposure they're not comfortable with. So they might make little jabs, ask pointed questions, or start testing your availability again, not necessarily to reconnect in a meaningful way, but to make sure they still have access to your attention. In some cases, they might even try to make you jealous in return. This is where the emotional immaturity of the avoidant pattern shows itself. Instead of expressing their feelings directly, they might talk about someone else they're talking to, become suddenly more active on social media, or flirt in a way that feels performative. It's not that they want to hurt you, it's that they're trying to regain a sense of control. They want to feel like they're the one who has the upper hand, because feeling emotionally vulnerable is deeply uncomfortable for them. The jealousy trigger doesn't mean they're ready to commit, but it does mean that you've activated something deeper in them, something they were trying to deny. And now, whether they admit it or not, they're feeling the emotional consequences of that denial. How they respond to those feelings will tell you a lot. Do they step up and take accountability for their feelings? Or do they continue to play games, trying to protect themselves at the expense of clarity and connection? Ultimately, the presence of jealousy in an avoidant is often one of the clearest signs that they care more than they're letting on. They may not say it. They may not even fully understand it themselves. But their emotional system is speaking, even if their words aren't. The question becomes, will they listen to it? And are they capable of responding in a way that honors both your needs and their own? The confession then retreat move is one of the most emotionally destabilizing behaviors an avoidant will engage in when they're secretly falling for you. It's that moment where, seemingly out of nowhere, they drop a deeply personal truth or express a raw emotional vulnerability, something that suggests they care about you far more than they've previously admitted. It could be a comment like, "I've never felt this way before," or "being with you feels different," or even a soft, whispered, "I miss you." And just as quickly as they let that truth escape, they pull back, emotionally, physically, or both, leaving you confused, hurt, and wondering what just happened. For someone with an avoidant attachment style, these confessions are not casual. They don't open up easily. In fact, vulnerability often feels like a threat to their independence, their emotional safety, and the illusion of control they cling to in relationships. So when they do let their guard down and reveal something intimate, it's usually spontaneous, unplanned, and emotionally intense. In that moment, they are fully present, fully feeling. The walls come down, not because they want them to, but because their feelings for you have grown to the point where they can't suppress them anymore. It's real, and it's terrifying for them. The problem is that avoidants are not equipped to sit comfortably with emotional intimacy. Once they've revealed something personal or shown their emotional hand, they feel exposed. That openness, which might feel bonding and beautiful to you, often feels like danger to them. The fear kicks in almost immediately after the confession. It could be fear of losing control, fear of being rejected now that they've shown you who they are, or even fear of being trapped in a level of closeness they're not ready to manage. So what do? They retreat. This retreat can take many forms. They may go silent, stop initiating contact, or act unusually cold. They might seem emotionally checked out or preoccupied, even avoiding eye contact or physical closeness. In some cases, they'll even pretend like the confession never happened. You might try to bring it up, hoping to deepen the conversation or gain clarity, but they shut it down or deflect. It's not because they didn't mean what they said, it's because they meant it too much, and now they're overwhelmed by what that means. To the person on the receiving end, this behavior is deeply confusing. You're left holding this emotionally charged moment, trying to make sense of why someone would say something so vulnerable, only to vanish into themselves the next day. It feels like emotional whiplash. And the danger here is that you may start to question your own perception. Did they really mean it? Did I imagine it? Was it a mistake? But here's the truth. They did mean it. That confession was real. It just came from a place they aren't comfortable staying in yet. Avoidants struggle with emotional regulation, especially when it comes to love and connection. Their early experiences may have taught them that closeness is unsafe, that needs are dangerous, or that love is conditional. So when they feel something intense, their instinct isn't to explore it, it's to control it. And the fastest way to regain control after vulnerability is to pull away. This creates a brutal cycle. They open up just enough to draw you closer, then retreat before things get too real. It leaves you in a holding pattern, hoping the person who showed you that sliver of their heart will come back and stay. The key to navigating this behavior is to recognize it for what it is, a sign of inner conflict, not a lack of feeling. Their retreat is not rejection, it's self-protection. That doesn't mean it's fair to you, but understanding the pattern helps you avoid internalizing it or thinking you need to work harder to fix things you don't. In fact, the best thing you can do is hold your own emotional boundaries. If they confess and disappear, let them know how that makes you feel. If they want to be close, they need to learn how to be consistent, not just intense and short bursts. People with avoidant patterns can grow, especially if they're aware of their tendencies and willing to work through them. But it takes time, honesty, and a willingness to tolerate the discomfort of emotional exposure. The confession then retreat move may feel like a game, but more often than not, it's a glimpse into someone who's emotionally torn, someone who wants love but doesn't yet trust it. Here's the truth. When someone with an avoidant attachment style is secretly falling for you, it rarely looks like the fairy tale. It looks like mixed signals, disappearing acts, emotional disclaimers, silent jealousy, and moments of raw vulnerability quickly followed by distance. It's a confusing dance of wanting love and fearing it at the same time. But behind every "I'm not ready," every pause, every retreat is often a heart that is feeling, just not in a way it knows how to handle. The key is to stop taking their behavior as a measure of your worth. Their confusion isn't your fault. Their hesitation isn't proof that you're not lovable. It's a reflection of their inner conflict. If you see these patterns and feel stuck in emotional limbo, ask yourself, are they showing progress or just playing the same game on repeat? Because while compassion is important, so are your standards. Love shouldn't feel like a guessing game. You deserve clarity. You deserve consistency. And you deserve a connection that grows in the light, not one that hides in emotional shadows. If they're willing to do the work, great. But if not, walk forward with your head high. Because real love doesn't retreat when it gets close. It shows up and stays.